This new book of mine, which is titled as A New World, I consider as a very important contribution from our side to the general world of thought. In my opinion, nobody has really defined what that new world order is going to be. Decline of the influence of the West is going to be a reality. That doesn't mean America will disappear or Europe will disappear.
China has been considered as a revisionist power as far as this particular America-centric global systems are concerned. But there are no clear alternatives emerging.
20th century, when the previous order took shape, it was economy and trade. In this century, it will be technology and trade. China has a very distinct advantage. It attained the distinct advantage in terms of leading not only in economy. One is economy, and together with economy, China's advantage is technology. So we need to deal with China in a very different way. I say that you have to understand China properly. China is not like any other neighbor. It's a civilizational country. It has a very big civilizational memory. Because of the civilizational memory, it behaves in a particular way. Religious organizations, whom we called as terrorists until yesterday, are today the rulers. If we could think of ending one particular type of humans, Neanderthals, some 45,000 years ago, why should we think that we are permanent?
Nationalism is, of course, your favorite topic. You have been talking about conservatism, but you have dealt with wokeism also. And you have called it is the new challenge or a new form of cultural Marxism.
That wokeism is nothing but going against every established order in the world.
But how can we continue this in this sort of chaotic world order where maintaining de-hyphenization and strategic autonomy, is it going to be a big challenge?
During the war and post-war, perception management becomes another big issue. Those who are losing today claim they are winning. I mean, through propaganda. So that's what we see in Pakistan's case. Badly mauled by us, suffered bad things, but globally they are claiming that they stood up to India, etc. Whatever people like me are today are primarily because of our association with the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. But I somehow feel that that is not really the important story. The story is that here is an organization which actually gives you the direction, the training. Now that training and direction one should really effectively use to the best of his capacity to serve the cause. India Foundation is generally considered as one of the leading intellectual centers. Many friends on the other side generally think or generally accuse that India Foundation was a creation of Modi government. Why we did 16 years of our 16th anniversary yesterday was to tell the world that no, it started in 2009. Generally, the right-wing movement, especially Sangh and all, used to be considered as anti-intellectualism. You also hear it from the left intelligentsia that you are anti-intellectual, which is not a case. Some of the brightest minds are the products of this movement. In the last century, India produced two original ideas. One was Mahatma Gandhi's Ahimsa and Satyagraha. The second idea was Deen Dayal Upadhyaya's integral humanist approach. But again, the idea was that the right-wing ecosystem should have a strong forum which can articulate its ideas in a coherent manner that somebody outside this sphere of this activity can also easily connect with, understand and appreciate it.
Namaste and welcome to Organiser's YouTube channel. In this edition of Outright, we have with us a Swayamsevak turned Pracharak, a strategic thinker and a politician, and a very well acclaimed columnist and author, Shri Madhav ji. Of course, due to his new book, The New World, 21st Century Global Order and India, which is in discussion these days. So we thought, besides his life journey, let us discuss about the contemporary global scenario and his ideas about the emerging global systems. So, welcome to Organiser, Madhavji, and thank you for sparing your time.
Thank you for hosting me.
Let us start with your journey first. from a Swayamsevak and even as a journalist with Jagruti Weekly, then have been associated with Pragya Bharati. So, how do you see this entire journey? And now as an author, because recently you have authored very important books, whether on partition, whether on constitution, then Hindutva paradigm, and now this new book. How do you see this journey?
Generally, Prafulji, I prefer not to talk too much about my personal life or anything, because for the simple reason that whatever people like me are today are primarily because of our association with the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. It is the Sangh that has given us a platform. It is the Sangh that has trained us into thinking in a particular way about the country, about the people, about our dharma, culture and everything. So that shaped us and that gave us opportunities. In my case, I would really think I am more fortunate than many others in the organization to get a number of openings at different stages. As you said, as a very young Pracharak, I was given the responsibility of managing Sangh's Telugu Weekly called Jagruti in Hyderabad. I was very young. I was just 25, 26 years old. At that time, that responsibility came on my shoulders. And we started in English monthly also. So those opportunities were given to me by the organization, which obviously I tried to perform to the best of my ability. That's how I somehow got into the public life also. When you are in media, automatically from Sangh-centric activity, you come into the public limelight. That's why I came into limelight, and then I was made the, again, Sangh spokesperson at a very young age. I was just 36 when I became the spokesperson in 2001. So that's how opportunities came my way. Then 2014, I have been sent to the BJP to handle affairs of India's Northeast and Jammu and Kashmir. So in a way, I feel fortunate that I've always got certain very important opportunities. And probably I have certain skills which I could put to use while doing all these things. But writing and reading have been a passion with me right from my childhood. As a student also, I used to participate in many debates and all that, essay writing competitions. That continued, and again, Sangha allowed me to continue with that. So that's how I got into writing articles and all in 1980s as a Pracharak. Then that continued, and I have authored several books in Telugu, and I used to write songs for Sangha. That activity continued, and in the last 2 decades, I have authored several books on national topics in English also. But I somehow feel that that is not really the important story. The story is that here is an organization which actually gives you the direction, the training. Now, that training and direction one should really effectively use to the best of his capacity to serve the cause. I think in that I tried my best.
India Foundation, now you are as a president guiding this institution. Yesterday on July 2nd, it has completed 16 years of its existence. And as you have been saying, it has been more as a do tank rather than just a think tank. How far it has helped in shaping policies and effectively engaging with the global leadership, and how far it has helped you in institutionalizing the process?
India Foundation is generally considered as one of the leading intellectual centers in India today, and globally also it has acquired a place, a recognition. But I know many friends on the other side generally think or generally accuse that India Foundation was a creation of Modi government. Why we did 16 years of our 16th anniversary yesterday was to tell the world that no, it started in 2009 when BJP was just in opposition, but we started. The idea was, again, it was the idea which took root after the birth centenary of Guruji Golwalkar. In 2006-07, we all know probably that Sangha has celebrated the birth centenary of Golwalkar ji. At that time, a massive reach out happened. Through that reach out, we came to realize that a large section of intelligentsia either is supportive of the nationalist idea that we stand for, are very inquisitive about it, want to know more about it. That negativity no longer existed. They are curious about it.
Some kind of dialogue was
They also wanted to engage with us. So it was at that time that this idea came up that can't we institutionalize it? Generally, the right-wing movement, especially Sangha and all, used to be considered as anti-intellectualism. You also hear it from the left intelligentsia that you are anti-intellectual, which is not a case. Some of the brightest minds are the products of this movement. And I would say that in the last century, India produced two original ideas. One was Mahatma Gandhi's Ahimsa and Satyagraha, the original political idea, which we contributed to the world. Then many countries, many leaders followed it, right? From Martin Luther King to Nelson Mandela. Many, even Barack Obama said my inspiration was Mahatma Gandhi's Satyagraha and Ahimsa. The second idea was Deen Dayal Upadhyaya's integral humanist approach. In different forms, everybody implements it. Maybe they don't call it integral humanism, but it has become a part of our political policy administrative system today. What is Antyodaya, which everybody implements? It's a product of that integral humanist thought. But that thought was given by a right-wing, so-called right-wing leader. So India's right has a good number of intelligent people. Organization's focus was different. Focus continues to be grassroots mobilization, creating unity and all that. But doesn't mean we didn't have them. Now, we did not have a good platform to keep all of them together or create that sense of community, sense of our networking. So we attempted it in 2009 through India Foundation, and we started what we call as India Ideas Dialogue, India Ideas Conclave, which became a platform for all the intellectuals who either directly a part of this movement or who are willing to engage with this movement to come on one platform. And I know in the last 15 years, it has helped in creating so many networks, which I see today to be very active in media, in social media, in public life, in publications, in writing authorships. We made our humble contribution to bringing them on one platform, creating one cohort.
Even policy studies for that matter, there are many people, who came out of or trained by India Foundation and then contributing.
India Foundation has created in the last 15 years a good number of people who have entered in important policy positions also. But again, the idea was that, the right-wing ecosystem should have a strong forum which can articulate its ideas in a coherent manner that somebody outside this sphere of this activity can also easily connect with, understand and appreciate it. In that, I think India Foundation has done substantial work. Today, India Foundation's network reaches out to dozens of countries outside India also. We have a good number of very well-meaning, very senior intellectuals as a part of this organization. They are in the governing council, they run the organization, they associate with it. That way, India Foundation's journey in the last 15 years has been quite eventful and for me personally, quite satisfying.
Now, coming to your book, this is a very critical time in all over what they called as the world order. International system, in last 500 years has been West-centric, as Paul Kennedy has written in his, Rise and Fall of Great Powers. But the timing of this book of yours, the New World, is very, very interesting because many people are talking about the decline of US. The alternative systems are not in place. So how do you see, and what was the thought process behind this particular book?
This new book of mine, which is titled as The New World, I consider as a very important contribution from our side to the general world of thought. The reason being, Today, as you also mentioned it, and you generally hear it from all the political commentators or strategic thinkers, that there is a transition happening in the world.
Right.
Many people say that a new world order is taking shape, but not many. In my opinion, nobody has really defined what that new world order is going to be. How does it look like? Why I say it is important is, the current world order or the outgoing one, the declining world order in which we have lived for the last 75 years, was a creation of the Western powers after 1945, after the Second World War. Essentially, they were victorious, they were the winners, winners take the cake. So they took the lead in creating a sort of a world institutional framework in which they wanted to fit every country. Some refused to fit into it, they became another pole. World became bipolar. Countries like us said, yeah, we are not able to decide, so we will keep quiet. We said sometime we called ourselves non-aligned, then we said we are third world. We used different names, but we basically followed the system, remained passive participants in that. I fully appreciate, because that was the time when we just became independent. Obviously, we were busy with building our own nation. 75 years down the line today, we see the symptoms of, why symptoms? Clear signals of that old order passing and a new order taking shape. I tried in this book to define the characteristics of the new order. How would it look like in the next 100 years? This world order is going to continue throughout 21st century. So I identified 10 characteristics of it. For example, decline of the influence of the West is going to be a reality. That doesn't mean America will disappear or Europe will disappear. But the influence that they had in the last century will no longer be there. Countries will defy and stand up. I was there in Mauritius 2 days ago. Mauritius government stood up very firmly against Great Britain to take back the Chagos Island, Diego Garcia and all that. They finally got it back. India also supported Mauritius. No, Mauritius is able to stand up today. So there is a change in the climate. So decline of West will be there, and at the same time rise of China, then rise of multipolar world. So like that, I identified 10 important features. But then in part 2, I also said, in 1945, when this order was taking shape, the world order was taking shape, we could not contribute much, although I mentioned the minor contributions we made. But this time India is a powerful country. India has a very visionary leadership today. If today it fails to contribute in this new order, then somebody else will do that. Then this world order will be shaped in the vision of somebody else. And that somebody else, anybody can understand who it will be. It will be China. India has to understand that it has a role to play in shaping, proactive role to play in shaping this world order. And to that end, India has to prepare itself. The second part deals with what India should do, 10 things that India should do to prepare to play a proactive role.
I'll come to those points and the brand Bharat that you have talked about. But as you mentioned about China, China has been considered as a revisionist power as far as this particular America-centric global systems are concerned. But there are no clear alternatives emerging. In a way, China is following the same rules and the same model. The only difference perhaps is the state-controlled capitalism or market or individual controlled capitalism. So how do you see this? China has been your focus of study for a long time. How do you see this rise, and do you see China-centric systems emerging somewhere?
Definitely, China wants that kind of a world where China is at the center and all others are in the vicinity, in the periphery. That kind of a world China does want. That is their target for 2049, when China becomes 100 years of communist rule. There's a very wonderful book called 100-Year Marathon. It talks about it, but I also extensively talked about it. See, what decides or defines where China will reach is, for example, in the last century, in 20th century, when the previous order took shape, it was economy and trade which decided the rise of nations. They were determining factors. In this century, it will be technology and trade. You have to be advanced in technology in order for you to be a strong power. You may have lot of money in the world, but you are weak in technology. You are not enough progressive in technology. You will be nowhere. Today, China has a very distinct advantage. It attained the distinct advantage in terms of leading not only in economy. In economy, of course, since 2008, they are the world's number 2 economy. Number 2 is actually a wrong description. Actually, their size of their economy is 60% of that of America. We are number 4 or 5, depending upon how you look at these numbers. But we are 1/5 or 1/6 of China. That means we are almost 1/8 or 1/9 of America. So there is a huge gap that exists. One is economy, and together with economy, China's advantage is technology. Today, in all the frontier areas of technology, China is giving very tough competition to America. In that sense, yes, China will be a challenge or a very strong power in this new order. That raises the important question, how do you deal with it? Now, when America was the strongest or America was the most influential power in the last century, we had a comfort level because we both are democracies. And we share the bond of 3 million, 4 billion Indians living there. Neither applies to China. Neither do we have people there, nor is China any democracy, anything but democracy. So we need to deal with China in a very different way. And the biggest challenge for India will be, unlike US-China, US and China have no connection. They are two different spheres, hemispheres. In geography, they are in Western Hemisphere, they are in Eastern Hemisphere, nothing in common. But here, India and China live in the same geostrategic space. And we have same geostrategic ambitions. We both want to have same influence in the same region. There's bound to be competition. There's bound to be conflict. And here is a country which is racing ahead in technology and trade. So India has to understand this challenge very carefully. And India has to have its own friends like US or other countries. Of course, we have to have them on our side, but also it should have its own area of influence, which is India's immediate neighborhood. I raised some of these issues. Dealing with China will be a very important challenge. In that, I just add one line, lest I am not seen as anti-China or China hawk. In India, we have China hawks. I am not a hawk. I say that you have to understand China properly. China is not like any other neighbor. It's a civilizational country. It has a very big civilizational memory. Because of the civilizational memory, it behaves in a particular way. Incidentally, India is also a civilizational country. We also have a civilizational behavior. So how do you create that match between the two? How do you ensure that we compete, but we don't take it to a level of conflict? These are the things we have to be very carefully handling. I'm sure this government is handling it very well. Given the relationship with America, if you want to go by America's desire, you will actually be fighting with China every day in the Indian Ocean or Indo-Pacific. At least wisely, we are not doing that.
No, why I was curious about this is when American system evolved, the so-called liberal world order, it had certain values about which we were, clear what they want to do, or even for that matter, the economic or trading system when it come to GATT or WTO. It was very clear that, the kind of market systems or market globalization they wanted to have. In China's case, there seems to be very ambiguity about this. Besides the debt, diplomacy, we do not have any clarity about how Chinese values, the Chinese characteristics will shape the world order. So how do you see?
So firstly, China definitely is not a democracy. So liberalism, democracy and liberalism go together. No question of any liberalism and all that in Chinese scheme of things. But interestingly, China is a very nationalistic country. China itself is very nationalistic, and it's not against countries having very nationalistic, attitude or approach to issues. Rather, it it wants those nationalistic sentiments of different countries to be used against the liberal activities of the West. It sees in this a good opportunity to pit these people against America and other Western
We have
powers.
seen that in WTO also. On many
WTO, you can see it in Europe, you can see it in our own neighborhood Asia. It wants countries to be nationalistic so they can fight against America. So it has its own brand of nationalism, which is essentially anti-West, anti-liberalism. We may not agree with that kind of postulate about nationalism. We are nationalist. We are very proud of being a very patriotic and nationalist country. But our nationalism is not anti anybody.
Very
In that sense, we are not
constructive
anti even. In that sense, not anti China also. We are anti China in terms of some of our conflicts with China, our border issues, China's effort to dominate us. But very fundamentally, China doesn't subscribe to political freedoms, which are very dear to us. We fought hundreds of years of battles against the Mughals and then against the British for freedom. What is freedom? It's essentially to have my own life. But China says no political freedoms, only economic freedoms. That's their model. They are happy with that model all over the world. So that's what brings to that earlier question. You know, what kind of model China wants in the world against the US model today? They want a model where countries will be loyal to or friendly with China. People may be against, but don't give any freedom to people. You control, power should control. And China will give you all the support to powers. Look at Pakistan, look at other countries which it supports. So there is a particular kind of nationalism and internationalism that China follows. In fact, China developed institutions today which are global, which recognize individual nations. You know, they have a conference coming up later this week. In fact, one of our very senior functionaries is also attending. It's Global Civilizations Initiative. It's called GCI. It says each civilization must be respected. For China, it's a clever way. You know, you say that I'm respecting your civilization, pit you against the Western civilization. Westerners obviously dominated to impose their civilization. So China uses that sentiment to create an anti-Western bloc. We know that. But still, as a civilizational power, we go and give our views there. So China's tactics have to be understood very carefully. One way to understand is to read Sun Tzu, The Art of War.
Art of War.
China runs with a particular thinking, particular mindset. We need to understand and carefully and then deal with it. Obviously, we don't want to pick fights with China every day, but we should know how to deal with it.
Another interesting concept that you have discussed in this book, people have been talking about the new bipolarity, but you are not just talking about the multipolarity, but you are talking actually about the heteropolarity. As you are saying, international NGOs and the big techs and the multinational corporations, they are going to be the new pole in itself. How do you see this unfolding?
I was in Hungary recently, in Budapest, for a conference which was addressed by their Prime Minister, Mr. Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban in his speech said that who is my biggest enemy? Who is the biggest enemy to Hungary? He said it is George Soros. Now, who is George Soros? Does he have an army? Does he have a country? Does he have any weapons? No, he just runs an investment group. Why is he an enemy of a country for a prime minister? And we also sometimes say, you know, George Soros ka threat hai India ko. Because those also have become very important players which can threaten your sovereignty also. I give you another very interesting example, which I gave in the book. When the Russians marched their armies into Ukraine on 22nd February 2022, they first took some 13 or 14 helicopters full of their military men into Kyiv. They landed them in Kyiv. Before doing that day, they simply sent malware into the ground stations of the Ukrainian satellites.
Oh.
Ground stations. So they did not hit the satellite, but ground stations were corrupted. So satellite link was lost. Now, once satellite link was lost, obviously your army cannot communicate. Your government cannot communicate. You can't communicate. So the Russians thought it will be a walkover. the foreign minister of Ukraine used some VPN system to tweet. Normally what happens in such situations is countries will probably approach Biden or European Union to help Ukraine. What foreign minister did was, using Twitter route, to tweet to Elon Musk. Now, who is Elon Musk? He has a communication company. He tweeted, you see, Mr. Musk, you want to take people to Mars. You want to have that freedom to take to Mars. But here is my country. My people are going to be enslaved by Russia. And Russia has disconnected my entire communication system. I know you have your Starlink services. Can you give me Starlink services? He did not ask any country. He asked Musk. And very interestingly, in 1 hour, Musk's reply comes, I am with you. I am with people of Ukraine. By evening, I am giving you 500 terminals, Starlink terminals. By evening, terminals came. From that day to today, Russia could not capture Kyiv. Why I am saying this is, today they are players, big players in your this thing. Religious organizations, whom we called as terrorists until yesterday, are today the rulers.
Yes.
Afghanistan, Syria. Two examples. So, we are in a heteropolar situation where not just the known political entities, the state, but so many such non-state entities have also become very powerful. In India, we discuss ad nauseum about Ford Foundation, this foundation, that foundation, as a big threat to India. So, today we are living in a world where states have to take into account all these things. That is what I called as heteropolar order, and it's going to be there. See, India is a very big country. So, we probably don't understand that challenge. But you ask the smaller countries, they're scared. They when Donald Trump stopped funding to USAID, what USAID does, it supports NGOs. But once that funding was stopped, countries started wilting. Smaller countries, struggling. Aid was stopped. So today NGOs are so powerful. That is the kind of heteropolar world in which we are living. That's what I tried to highlight.
Another important aspect that you have touched upon in this book is about the frontier of artificial intelligence and its impact on global affairs. In fact, you have used the term hybrid humanoids. Many people are saying that ultimately it is the human creation, so it is it will be human-centric world, technology beyond a point. But it looks like it is going beyond that. So, in next 20-25 years, how do you see artificial intelligence impacting the strategic scenario?
Artificial intelligence is going to revolutionize the way human race existed until now. Completely transform us into a totally different creatures. On a lighter note, I mentioned it in my book also. 45,000 years ago, there are Neanderthals who existed in the world. They were they became extinct, and Homo sapien life came into being. We are all Homo sapiens. On 2 legs, we have a thinking faculty. We have an institutional mechanism of family, community, and all that. This is the Homo sapiens. Now, if we could think of ending one particular type of humans, Neanderthals, some 45,000 years ago, why should we think that we are permanent? We also will be one day extinct. I'm saying that kind of a situation we are slowly moving towards. That doesn't mean tomorrow it will happen. But today we are entering an area where machine man is a reality. Today, artificial intelligence, AI, has created machines which are more intelligent than humans. Any number of examples, my book has lots of information. Machines which are more intelligent than men. So why do you call it artificial now? It's real. That machine can think more faster than you, it can think better than you, and all that. So many examples, I don't get into that. But we are now moving into a direction where what used to be a fiction in movies, like some machine-like creature coming from some other planet, and humans trying to communicate with it. These are movies. They will no longer be movies. Today, in countries, many hospital services are handled by robots. In fact, we hosted a very important conference last year in which we put this question, where would artificial intelligence lead us to? Today we have machines that can think. But do we also have machines that will have consciousness? Like, if I scold that camera, will it cry? If I say something, will it come back to me? We may think it's all fiction or it's a kidding type of thing. No, it may be a reality. Already we are halfway through that. That is why this whole argument that humans are creating, humans are controlling, needs to be a very serious, there needs to be a serious thought. Very interestingly, this thought or this effort was taken up by Vatican, otherwise a religious body. Vatican in 2021 hosted a conference on AI ethics. How far should we go in AI? Where to draw the red line? And they came out with 6 points. It's called Rome Call for AI Ethics. It's available on internet. Anybody can Google it. Rome Call for AI Ethics. But lead was taken by Vatican. It hosted where Christian fathers were there, bishops were there, and all the top leaders of IBM, NVIDIA, they were all there. They came out with 6 points. Pope's only message was, AI is beneficial for mankind. Do it. Whatever you want to do it. But man should be supreme. This is one statement. Human superiority you have to maintain. So whether that will continue or we enter a stage where machines will be deciding about the fate of humans, my view is if we don't stop somewhere, I'm not subscribing that we should stop. I'm open to the idea that no, it should happen. We have to slowly fade away. And the new type of digital humans, meta-humans I called it, meta-humans should take over. That can happen. Already, I don't know if you have, I don't have, but we have enough people who have machines that are in your heart. They are called pacemakers.
Yes.
If your heart can be run by a machine, tomorrow there will be chips which will run your mind.
No, even mobiles and most of the technologies are running us now.
At least they are outside of your body. I'm saying you will have things inside your body. So body will become a machine. That makes your efficiency, increase your efficiency of action, efficiency of thought. We are moving in that direction.
Another interesting aspect, Madhavji, you have dealt with in this book. Nationalism is, of course, your favorite topic. You have been talking about conservatism, but you have dealt with wokeism also. And you have called it is the new challenge or a new form of cultural Marxism. There are important values that are being challenged through cultural Marxist paradigm. And when nationalism is emerging in a new way, how do you see this conflict and the values? Because culture and values is another area where you have been working on.
I identified 2 important sociological developments that dominate the new world. One of them will be the return of nationalism, return of national sovereignty, national identities. That is out of compulsion, you can call it, or probably a rethink. Because after all, until 1930s and 1940s, nationalism was never a bad word. When Germany
rise of fascism
was united, everybody celebrated Germany's unity. So, it became a bad word because of Hitler and Mussolini. By the way, Hitler never talked about nationalism. He always talked about the global superiority. It's not nationalism. Anyway, so nationalism is already making a big comeback. Countries in Asia are very familiar with nationalism, but a similar kind of nationalism is making a big return in Europe and in the West. I think that is suffice to say that. But the other very important development will be the rise of a very destructive kind of social ideology, which for want of any other description, people call it as wokeism. Wakeism became wokeism. So that wokeism is nothing but going against every established order in the world. Everything that has been established over several centuries of human experience and experimentation should now be discarded. You discard your state, you discard your laws, you discard your social institutions, you discard your religion, you discard your family, and you discard your gender identity also. It is actually coming down to that level where you can't even have man-woman divide also. In fact, in many institutions in Europe today, our parents cannot state the gender of the child when they admit he or she, her or him in the school. Because the school says the gender the child will decide when he or she turns 14. Now, how can anyone decide gender? Gender is what you are born with. I mean, something like that is the understanding until now, conventional understanding. Now, new understanding is no, you are born with a physical body. Your gender will be what you think.
Socio-psychological.
Psychological. So Biden, one of the first files he signed, first executive orders he signed in 2021 was to allow men to use women's toilets. One of the executive orders. So we are going in a very dangerous direction. I'm calling it dangerous because we are used to a totally different kind of social structure. Now they want a social structure where you will become like an animal. So there is. We divide animals on gender basis, but animals probably don't. They live together. They do everything together. So maybe they want that kind of way. India still, fortunately, because here the traditionalist or culturalist, social conservative movements are very strong in India. RSS, other organizations are strong. Governments also subscribe to that kind of thought process. So India is not a big victim. There was a big effort made to make same-sex marriages legally, legitimate in our country. Matter went up to the Supreme Court. Government of India took a very wise stand in that matter. It said, we are not commenting about same-sex relationships. Another time, another discussion. But marriage is a very sacred institution in India. You can't call every communion a marriage. So government said, no, we can't accept that. But, more than 60 countries today legalized same-sex marriages. We are moving into that direction. World is moving into the direction. We have to take cognizance of it. India cannot remain completely isolated from all these things.
Now, let us come to Indian scenario and how, the latest developments during Operation Sindoor. You have rightly mentioned, besides Panchamrut, strategic autonomy and de-hyphenization have been the key principles around which Prime Minister Modi and his foreign policy has evolved. And at some level, you were also involved in, at least operationalizing some of those aspects. But we have seen during Operation Sindoor, most of the things were challenged. India was tried to push back. We made a comeback. Strategically, we have shown our, what we can do as far as precision strikes are concerned. But how can we continue this in this sort of chaotic world order where maintaining de-hyphenization and strategic autonomy isn't going to be a big challenge?
It has always been a challenge, but let me just come back to that war issue. We must be very careful that in this new tech order, we are into a tech order. No war can conclusively be said as won or lost. Nowhere, not just in India. In every war, the victor will also equally suffer as the vanquished. The one who loses in the war will be hit, but the one who won the war also equally suffer. Because you are in technological warfare era. And here...
We are seeing that in Israel-Iran conflict.
Everywhere. So in this era, you can't really say that I won the war, so-and-so lost the war. Because then, during the war and post-war, perception management becomes another big issue. Those who are losing today claim they are winning. I mean, through propaganda. So, that's what we see in Pakistan's case. Badly mauled by us, suffered bad things, but globally they are claiming that they, stood up to India, etc., etc. So, in this kind of a scenario, India has to tread this whole conflict domain very carefully. I would say India is doing the right thing. That's where this question of strategic autonomy, etc., comes into picture. We are not taking sides in wars. We did not take any side in Russia-Ukraine war, nor did we take any side in Iran-Israel war. Many people put pressure on us. Many criticized us also for not taking the side of this country or that. But Hindi में वो कहावत है, शेर का पूंछ नहीं पकड़ना है. I mean, in this kind of a war, you should never try to catch hold of the tail of a tiger, because you can catch it, you can never leave it. Because once you catch it, you will never be able to stop the tiger. But if you leave it, the tiger will swallow you. Don't try to catch the tail of a tiger, because the wars are different. That India is very, very effectively doing. But having said it, India has to now think that it has to now play a bigger role, a prominent role. Prime Minister and our government is talking about Global South. In my opinion, Global South is a slightly enigmatic entity. Now, for example, what is South? Is Australia South or North? For that matter, is Hungary in South or North? Or Eastern Europe South or North? So, what we are calling as Global South is not necessarily a geographical description. It's about countries which are not on the western side, on the side of the global west, or developed west. Probably we are talking about that. But India's immediate and important concern should be India's immediate and extended neighborhood, which I will call as Indian Ocean region. Here, India has to focus more. One of the criticisms that we hear is that during Operation Sindoor, or in the aftermath, none of our neighbors stood very firmly behind us. Of course, all of them have condemned terrorism. But, you expect your neighbor to be saying that, no, what Pakistan is doing wrong. But because you are in a situation where there's China also influencing them, there are others influencing them. So we need to also turn our attention to this region in a more prominent way. We have to rise as a very important regional power. Very interestingly, Prafulla, read Chinese literature. I sometimes try to follow what they are saying. Always they use, number one, they call themselves a developing country. They, even today, with $18 trillion economy, they don't claim to be a developed country. They continue to call us developing country, because they know they have to mobilize developing countries, other developing countries. Number two, they describe themselves as a regional power. Why? The reason is they want to focus on the region. For them, slightly different from us, for them, Eurasia is their region. Now they are saying Afro-Eurasia. My influence should expand up to Africa. So in a gradualist manner they are going. So that is a wise way to do it. India also has to now expand its relationships, engagement, footprints in the immediate neighborhood and the extended neighborhood. Besides, of course, building on the strengths it has in Europe, in America.
Besides this, the strategic part, while talking about the policies in Bharat, you have extensively spoken about the education, innovation and technology part on the one hand and demography on the other hand. Why, of course you have dealt with the problem and issues related to aging but how do you see, because RSS has been talking about population policy. This government also is, recently released a report related to TFR and all those things. So how do you see we going when we are talking about the Vikasit Bharat dream and this entire issue of demography and the qualitative aspect of demography?
Demography is destiny, is that famous Auguste Comte's statement we often use. It's actually your destiny in a very different sense also. Too much population is not good for any country, because you need to have resources to manage that kind of population. But government has an excellent welfare program. So people are not facing any food shortage or basic amenities shortage that are available thanks to Prime Minister Modi's number of schemes and all. But to provide jobs to them requires a very new thinking, very different thinking. We have to train our youngsters to cater to global markets. That's what even Prime Minister Modi's government is doing.
The concept of employability itself has to change.
In fact, Government of India, not many people know about it, has human resources exchange agreements with countries like Japan and Korea. We can send our manpower there. Agreements we are doing. Because that's also one of the ways to, you can't create 2 crore jobs every year in this country. You have to find, you have to send people where jobs exist. So we have to train people in that manner. So that is one area. Second area is, I mentioned it, this has to be given serious thought to. When we talk about employment generation, even today we are stuck with that whole idea of manufacturing.
Yes.
We think that that's the only way. But general manufacturing, it's saturated in our neighborhood. You can't compete with China, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines. A massive manufacturing activity happening there. So you can probably cater to a limited extent. But high-end manufacturing, defense manufacturing, aerospace manufacturing, those areas there is scope. But where there is scope is big, deep tech. You have to invest heavily in deep tech R&D. That will create a new kind of opportunity, new kind of avenues for India, whether it is artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, space and aerospace, or defense, as I mentioned, defense manufacturing, genetics, biotechnology, these areas. Then otherwise, you invest on hospitality, you invest on tourism. India is one country in which not less than 40 to 50 million people are traveling. Massive. But do we have infrastructure? You come from Maharashtra, I come from Telangana, Andhra. Do we have good guides if a tourist comes? I mean, trained guides. वो कहानी बता देगा, but he is not trained. So we need to invest in many such areas. Skill enhancement is a big area. Skill, not skilling, skill enhancement. Because today in AI era, every skill has to be enhanced. Today in Organiser, have you ever thought that you have to sit in front of cameras? But you are trained today. You have reskilled yourself to deal with camera-based journalism. So that's why every level you have to reskill people. So we need to invest heavily. In fact, some industry people came to me, I told them the same thing. Today our industry has to think differently totally. Invest in different areas, invest in R&D, invest in reskilling. That's how we can today catch up with the world. So that is where the demographics and employment, everything is interlinked.
While talking about Brand Bharat, you have made one very, very important statement. India should give up romanticism. But at the same time, you are talking about dharmocracy, you are talking about Ekatma Manav Darshan, Chiti and Virat, and the spirit or India's national character. So how do you see this Brand Bharat? Is it going to be again some kind of imitation and just branding in terms of words, or in terms of substance we have something different to offer to this emerging world order?
Let me first deal with that question of romanticism. As I said, some trade organization people came. They said that we are the world's largest trade body. I said, how is it very relevant for us? India is a country of 1.4 billion people. So anything you do will be largest. So you create if you say India is the largest journalist country, it will be largest because you have 1.4 billion people.
Largest consumer of data.
It will automatically happen. What is needed is, where are you in industry? It's not about large. That's what I say, romanticism. They will only come and say we are the largest industry body in the world. But what's your contribution to India's economy, our global economy? We need to ask those substantive questions. Prime Minister talked about Viksit Bharat by 2047. So to reach there, what I have to do? In fact, in one of my interviews, I said, you see, today $5 to $7 trillion is also not an enough target for India. We have to gradually move there. But a minimum of 10 trillion you have to make, because once you are $10 trillion, then your per capita GDP will be $6,500. Because we are a 1.4 billion population. By the way, by 2050, our population will be 1.65. It's growing.
And
then it will start receding.
And the aging population will be...
Then it will start receding. So we have a challenge of population and increasing per capita. Of course, we have created good basic fundamental life. It's better than 10 years ago today. But today we have to aim at big numbers. How do we reach there is where we have to think very seriously. towards that a totally new approach is needed. That is where I meant that, let's not go by that romantic approach. Let's be more realistic. And fortunately, this government is a very realistic government. That's the reason why yesterday in cabinet, this government has allocated 1 lakh crore for research activity, National Research Foundation, Anusandhan activity. Now, you need to invest heavily on R&D. That's how you grow new industry. That's how you grow new type of economic activity. So I think we have to move in that direction. Finally, that whole point of Brand Bharat is, finally, while doing all this, do you want to create one more European version of India? There are 27 countries in Europe. You go to, especially if you go to Western Europe, those 16, 17 countries, any city you go, you feel the same. Okay? Monuments are different. But city life is same, city culture is same, everything is same. So we want one more Europe here? Or no. When Bharat rises with certain values. It also contributes to the table, global table, brings certain values. What are those values? That also we should define, think seriously. That is what I meant by Brand Bharat. We have to, when you are rising, when you have the aspiration to become Vishwaguru, what is it that you are offering to the table, on the table to the world? That we have to decide. For example, we have to be a democracy, but Indian democracy should be different. There are democracies in the world. If it is not taking too much time, I narrate one very funny incident. One guy goes to Xi Jinping, says, I want democracy in China. Xi Jinping says, what democracy do you want? Is it the democracy of American kind, where the guy who gets highest number of votes is not the president? I mean, of course, not Trump. Until before him, every time the guy who got highest number of votes always lost, because they have a different system of college, electoral college. In that he loses. So you want that democracy? Or you want the kind of British democracy where the ruling party got exactly the same number of votes, same percentage of votes as in the last election. But in the last election, it was the opposition party. In this election, same percentage of vote, it is ruling party, because the others were divided. You want that democracy? Or he says the French model, where I got highest number of votes, but all others ganged up and denied me the power to rule, and they became the rulers. He says, which democracy do you want? This guy says, any democracy is okay, because at least after 5 years I can change them. Here I can't change you. So I'm saying democracy is the available best form today. There are number of loopholes. So India is wedded to that democracy, but it is also faulty. That's why Gandhi and Deen Dayal ji both talked about democracy at the grassroots. It's a grassroots democracy. Lamba discussion hai, main usme nahi jata. Can we promote that idea? People-centric democracy, not majority-centric democracy. We need to offer that idea to the world, that model. Our idea about social life, our idea about decentralization, many such Indian ideas also have to be placed before the world.
Institutionalize and internationalize.
So you have to offer it to the world. I mentioned it in the book. Today, World Economic Forum is offering solutions that are actually originally Indian. Recently they came up with the idea that stakeholder capitalism. What is stakeholder capitalism? Stakeholder capitalism ka definition ye hai ki, when you start a company, you basically think about your stakeholders, your stock market, the guys who invested in you, your investors. You want to give more profits to them.
Some kind of shareholders.
Exactly, shareholders. You think of giving more profits to shareholder, but no company should think only about their shareholders. They think about every customer. Society. Through my activity, society also happy or not?
From shareholders to stakeholders.
Stakeholder, society. It says that is what they call as stakeholder capitalism. Now, this is Gandhi's idea, no? When he said, trusteeship, dharmakatrutva. Now, this is being packaged in a different language and offered by World Economic Forum, and world is lapping up. Something that you should be giving to the world. Many such ideas India can bring to the table. But are we investing in that? Are we thinking, do we have institutions that are working on those ideas? When I grow, I become number 2 in the world. Remember, when China became number 2, you and me are worried that China is bringing not just money and technology, it is bringing a value system. That's the worry, no? Why are we worried about China's rise? Because it is not just a normal rise. With it, China is bringing a particular kind of model imposing on the world. But when we rise, are we also bringing something? That is what I said, Brand Bharat. We have to think about it. Lamba discussion, I did not take it up in the book at length, but we have to really seriously think about that aspect also.
That is great, very fascinating. In fact, I was engaging, I was very, expecting much more, and I hope in future you will be able to give more thought on this. But in this entire process, coming to our concluding question, Ram Madhavji, where do you see your role and India Foundation's role in building this Brand Bharat? Individually, I know you will say, what a party and organization or says, but otherwise, at personal level, where do you see your role?
Look, I became a Pracharek at a very young age. I was just 16 when I became a Pracharek. So, since then until now, I never thought about myself. Whatever came my way, it was sometimes given. Sometimes I try to create it for myself. I just went with the flow. I'm sure I will be probably given some proper assignments and I will do that. But I see not just for India Foundation, for that matter, I would say even for Organiser and all of us who belong to a particular school of thought, I see a huge opportunity for all of us. If only we are ready to rise up. That's where I said that romanticism. If we are not stuck in that romanticism, that hamara aa gaya hai, Hindu Rashtra ban gaya. If we are not in that, we now see that here is my opportunity. Here is where I have to now get into it. Then there is a lot to do. Through India Foundation, we are trying to do a lot of it. And you started by talking about do tank. We would love to call ourselves a do tank, because enough thinking has happened in the world. In India, though, thinking has 5,000 years of history or even more. So it's not just about thinking. How do you translate that thinking into, action? And there, India Foundation does a lot of work. Our focus largely is India, of course, our country, and the extended neighborhood. We see that India needs to do a lot of work in this area, connect with people. We have a great civilizational bond. Everywhere if you are an Indian, you are naturally welcomed there because there is a civilizational connect. I mean, I go to many of these neighboring countries, they are very fond of us. We haven't built on that. Now we have to work on that at the people level, country to country level. In all these areas, India Foundation has been working, but we will continue to work in these areas and help the government in achieving some of its set goals and all.
Thank you, Ram Madhavji, for sparing time and talking to Organiser. I know you have been very busy traveling all around, and still you took out time and discussed this book and beyond. So thank you very much on behalf of Organiser and Organiser viewers. I look forward to your, association and writing with the Organiser. Namaste and
Dhanyawad. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
So viewers, this was Shri Ram Madhavji, who not just spoke about the ideas that he discussed in the book, but much beyond that, and the opportunities that all of us have to build Brand Bharat. I hope you would find this conversation fascinating. Keep supporting Organiser, the voice of the nation. Namaste. Dhanyawad.